Hello, my name is Margia Wallace, the superintendent of your school district. You would have to agree that there has been a lot of changes in our school system recently. We've seen changes in local city policies, we've seen changes in federal policies, state policies, and we've even seen changes in school level policies. With schools facing so many changes, there has been a noticeable change in teacher morale and teacher motivation. Poor teacher morale and motivation ultimately leads to poor student morale and motivation. And when this happens, our school districts suffer, our schools suffer, our students suffer. As I mentioned before, there has been a noticeable change in the morale of the teachers and the students. So my team and I decided to do an investigation into what is actually causing um, this type of behavior. What we discovered was the principals needed training in leading change. With all the changes going on, we need our leaders to be trained in handling and leading those changes. The team decided to put together a short training video to, first of all, introduce you to some leadership models, some things that can help you lead change in your school. We also would like to give you some recommendation or provide you with some recommendations on how to use these leadership models. There are a lot of change management models available for use. However, today we're just going to focus on 5. Uh, Linwin's change management model, the Bridges transition model, Carter's 8-step model, the change curve, and force field analysis. While researching ways in order to help you, the principal, deal with leading change, I decided that these 5 would probably serve you better. Linwin's change management model is a 3-step process. It's most commonly known as the unfreeze, change, and freeze model. This is the first one that we're going to look at today. To give you a little bit of background on Kirk Linwin, Kirk Linwin developed this model in the 1940s. He's known as a physicist and a social scientist. To understand Kirk Linwin's concept of unfreeze, change, refreeze, think of a common ice cube. If you have an ice cube, but your ice cube, you want it to make it into a different shape, first you must unfreeze that ice cube and turn it into a liquid state and actually mold it into the shape in which you want it to be in. For example, if you want that new shape to be a cone. Well, Kirk Linwin took this same concept, which is very good because you can visualize this concept. First, unfreezing requires that, and we're talking about a change, it includes making sure that making sure that your employees are ready for the change. Once this has happened, you can move on to the second phase, which is not always that easy because people like to stay in the state in which they are. Okay, then you must execute that change. Once you execute that change, this is the part where everything is unfrozen and it's in maybe like a liquid state. But in order to get to that shape that you desire, then you must ensure that the change becomes permanent. You want your change to anchor. Okay, I want to dig a little bit deeper into Lemwood's unfreeze, change, and refreeze model. When you're talking about unfreezing, again, you're getting people ready for the change. And in order to get them ready for the change, you must explain to your staff why the change is necessary. Make sure that everyone that's going to be affected by that change is aware that a change is going to take place. And of course, there are going to be doubts and concerns. um, Anytime there's something that's going to change, there are going to be doubts and concerns. Deal with the people's doubts and concerns during the unfreeze stage. And make sure that you have the support from your leadership team. Next is the change itself. And when the change itself is going to make sure you want to involve people in the change process. Dispel any rumors about what the change is going to actually be. Be transparent during this phase. Provide training for training on the new concept. And empower action. You don't want to just stay still and just talk about change, because you can have a meeting about the change, then have another meeting about the change, make up sub committees about the change. What happens here is that change is not really taking place. The only thing that you're doing is you're talking about it. So during the change, you want to make sure that some action is taking place. During the refreeze stage, this is where you're going to anchor. Now you've talked about it, you implemented the change, you want to anchor the change in your culture to make sure that it's going to go forward. You still want to provide support and try to eliminate as many barriers as possible. And of course, you want to celebrate the rewards. And as you can see, during these changes and the different stages, one constant remains: communication, communication, communication. Communication is the key. Communication is going to be the success. It's going to help with your success of the change. Okay, we can stop the video for a few minutes to see if there are any questions about Kirk Lemwood's change management model. Okay, let's take a look at Bridges' transition model. The first thing that you should notice, that should be apparent, is that there are 3 stages. But instead of 3 stages of change, Bridges decided to use 3 stages of transition. He believed that there's a difference between change and transition. Whereas change is something that's going to happen to people whether they agree with it or not. And it's external. However, transition is internal. And this is what happens in the person's mind while they're going through the change. And change can actually be very quickly, where transition usually takes a longer period of time. Bridges' 3 stages of transition actually starts at the end. So it's the ending, losing, letting go of the old. Then there's the neutral zone, which if you go through the transition, in the end, there's a new beginning. A little background on William Bridges. William Bridges is a change consultant, and he's also the author of the book Managing Transitions. In his book is where he introduced the 3 changes of transition, and the model was created in 1991. When we think of ending something or losing or letting go, these things are tied to our emotions of our mind. So I decided to use emojis in order to demonstrate uh, some of the uh, some of the feelings that you go through when you're in phase one of the three stages of transition. Fear, denial, anger, disorientation, uncertainty, sadness, frustration, a sense of loss. In order to effectively help a person let go, you got to help them deal with their tangible and their intangible losses, and mentally prepare them to uh, move on to the next phase. So remember that when we're dealing with the three stages of transition, phase two, which is the neutral zone, and we're talking about people's mind, what people are thinking, you may run into a resentment towards the change initiative, experience low morale and low productivity, anxiety about, people might have anxiety about what their role is, or the status or identity of the new change. And of course, you can have skepticism and about the change initiative. But this will change. And once it changes, you will be led to phase three, the new beginning. Now, I know it seemed like, okay, we went through three stages and we went through phases, and we went through them pretty quickly. This is not a quick process. It is up to you, the leader, to guide your team through the phases, especially phase one. Phase one is going to take a little bit of time because you're dealing with so many emotions, and all of those emotions are going to show up again in phase two, but they're going to show up in a different way. That way, and they're going to show up in the resentment and the towards what you're trying to change, and and the low morale and productivity. But it's up to you, the leader, to provide ways to motivate your team, to listen to them, to communicate, and reassure them that there is going to be a new beginning, and that the change is necessary for the organization to grow and thrive. So make sure that when you're going through, if you use this model, let it take its natural course. You don't want to, of course, not uh, use a lot of time, but it's going to take some people more time to actually get on board with the change than it is going to for others. Sometimes people are not able to actually see the new beginning. They can't see into the future, so um, that creates a lot of skepticism also. Um, and it's important, to set some short-term goals, before you get to that stage, and make sure that you reward and your reward successes. Once your change has reached, or your transition has reached the new beginning, you should notice high energy in your team, and an openness to learn more about what's going on, what the change. You might even experience a renewed commitment to the organization, and or a renewed commitment to the role in the organization. This is the acceptance stage. The new beginning is the acceptance stage. You want to help people. It's up to you, the leader, to help people develop the new identity and experience that new energy, and discover the new sense of purpose to make the change work. Okay, so far, the models that we have looked at have had three steps, or three phases. Carter in 1995 developed an 8-step model, which started with establishing a sense of urgency. Whereas this is where you want to get your your team motivated about the change that's going to take place. So during this time, um, if you get everyone involved, again, if in order for change to happen, you have to get the buy-in of your organization. You would do that at step one. Step two, you want to create a guiding coalition. Again, that's the buy-in, because you don't want to actually move too quickly from from step one to step two. You want to create that urgency, but you don't want to do it too quickly. So the most important thing is to get the buy-in of your team. Then you want to create a vision for your change. When you first started to change, you probably have a whole lot of ideas floating around in your head. You want to take those and mold them into a vision to give your team a sense of what the change is going to look like. Then you want to communicate that vision for the buy-in. Remember that in all of the models, in change, in leading your change, communication is very, very important. So here you want to not only communicate your vision, but you want to create your vision for the buy-in. Next, you want to empower a broad base action. And to do this, you want to communicate it frequently and powerfully. In other words, you want to sell your product. Sell what it is that you want to change. Sell that change to your team. And next you want to remove the barriers and that might stop your change from happening. Remove all obstacles that might be in the way of your change. And you want to create some short-term wins. The best way to tackle a big product is to actually break it down into pieces, break it down into short, into small segments. And then you want to celebrate each time you are able to have a win. And then, of course, the last one is you want to incorporate it into your culture. This means implementing it and anchoring it and building that change so that it will actually start being able to be used, and people are not looking to go back to the old way of doing things. If you can get your change anchored, then you have a less chance of resistance, a better chance of acceptance. And again, of course, you want to celebrate your wins. Celebrate with reward. I forgot to introduce you to the man, Mr. John P. Carter. He actually is an author of quite a few books, and he introduced this 8-step model in one of his books, in his book of Leading Change. I want you to become familiar with, and when you're researching whether or not you want to use this model in your school, feel free to look at some of the works of Mr. John Carter. Okay, I mentioned a little while ago that Carter's 8 stages of change, that up until we were introduced to Carter's 8 stages of change, we actually was working with either 3 steps or 3 phases. Let's take a look at Carter's 8 stages. If you really look at them, the 8 stages can still be incorporated into 3 phases. The first one, the first 3 stages is where you create your climate for change. This is where you prepare your team and get them ready for change. The second one will be engaging and embedding the organization. And as you can see, that's would be steps 4, 5, and 6. Then, of course, implementing and sustaining the change, implementing it and anchoring it. If you compare that to Lemwin's 3-step model, you can see how they compare to each other. This is a way up that you can see that we're still talking about the same information. It's just that it has been broadened in Carter's 8 stages, where Lemwin's his unfreezing, his change, and refreezing is a more of a condensed version of Carter's 8 changes. Later in the 1940s, Kirk Lemwin created the force field analysis. And a lot of times the force field analysis is used along with some of the other models, but it can also be a standalone. You can use it to decide whether or not to go forward with the proposed change or proposed idea. So in other words, you're going to look at the pros and the cons as to whether or not it is feasible to move forward, with your proposed change. We're going to take a little bit in-depth look at that now. When using a force field analysis approach, you want to start with a proposed change, and you're going to look at the forces for the change and the forces resisting the change. And this is pretty much like looking at the pros and the cons and seeing which one outweighs the other, and based upon which one outweighs the other, decide whether or not to go forward with your proposed change. All right, so the model before kind of like told you, how, to how you're going to do that. But there's also a worksheet called a force field analysis worksheet, and I was able to find one for you in Mind Tools. But you don't have to use this worksheet. You can use just a plain chalkboard, a piece of paper. You can, in order to do the analysis. So basically what you're going to do here is you're going to write your proposed change in the middle box. And then on the left hand side, you're going to write down all your forces for the change, all the reasons for the change. And on the right hand side, you're going to write all your forces against the change. And then you're going to give each change a score. Now, the scores are, you can use a scoring process of 1 being the weakest to 5 being the strongest, and according to the degree of influence that change is going to have on your that force is going to have on your proposed change. And then at the end, you want to add up your scores for each side and determine whether or not you should move forward. Okay, here's an example of what we were talking about before. In the middle here, we have a proposed change. The proposed change is to upgrade the factory with a new manufacturing equipment, On the left-hand side, we have put scores from beginning with from 4 to 1. 1 being the weakest, or as far as influence on upgrading the new manufacturing equipment. And on the left hand side, we have written all of the forces for the change. What would this change do? What would this do for the change? For example, the customer want new products. There's improved production speed. It will reduce training time and low maintenance costs. And each one of those voices have been given a score. As you can see at the end, the score is 10 for the pros, or 10 for the forces for change. And if you look on the right hand side, we have forces against the change. What would happen if we didn't do this change? We have a loss of staff over time. Staff, well, these are influences, how they will influence the proposed change. The staff will be fearful. The staff is fearful of new technology, the impact on the environment, the cost, disruption. Well, the cons ended up with a score of 11. At this point, we can decide that, hey, maybe we may not use the change, but we don't necessarily have to use this to decide whether or not we're going to implement the change. It could be used to actually make a decision on how to bring the forces for the change that are weak. How can we improve on those, or how can we improve on the cons, so that we might be able to move forward with this change? Okay, so looking at everything that we have talked about surrounding the force field analysis, do you think that we are ready to move forward with the change? Well, that's going to be up to you. It's going to be determined whether based upon what your proposed change is. And of course, I want to point out that, the force field analysis can also be used with other models. It can be used as a standalone, or it can be used with other models. A lot of people, a lot of organizations, use the force field analysis as a tool, along with Carter's unfreeze, change, and freeze process, a model. Right. The final concept that we're going to look at today is the change curve. The change curve deals with personal transition as well as organizational change, and it helps to explain, how people feel about change taking place. And it's used a lot in business to kind of explain people's emotions towards a change. And so because people can experience traumatic feelings when when you mention change, or that something is going to change in your organization. I know that when in an organization that I worked in, uh, when we were told that we were going to get a new computer system, and people have been doing the same thing for so long, and all of a sudden now you say we're going to get a new computer system, there was a lot of shock. And and we went through each one of these phases. People were in denial. No, they're not going to take away our old system. It works so well. And it was just in denial. It's not going to happen. I remember hearing people saying, "Oh, it's going to crash." And once that change was implemented, they went into frustration. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't learn this. I'm too old to learn this. This is where you encounter a lot of people start to retire because they didn't want to do it. And you run into depression at the curve of the curve change model is depression. And this is when leading the change is going to be so important. It's going to be important for you as leaders to make sure that you're able to motivate your team, to encourage them to experiment, and and learn how to work in the new situation so that they can feel more positive and they can and embrace the change. Because in the end, or at the height of the other side of the curve, you're going to integrate the change, and you're going to have a renewed individual. You're going to have acceptance to that change. It may not be all at once. In the company that I work for, we're pretty much still in the decision stage, and we have some people who have actually gone to the top of that curve on the right hand side, where they have a new they feel like they're empowered now, because with all of the training and all of the communication, all of the support from the leaders, from the upper management, they have accepted that this is going to be the new way of life. And our managers make sure that we are actually anchored, by doing temperature checks, making sure that we have the resources in which we need in order to work there, to work in the system. So we're going to talk a little bit more now about the change curve. I just want to share that story with you and kind of bring it to an example of how the change curve work. The change curve holds a lot of similarities to the Bridges transitional model. They were both developed from dealing with grief. And as you can see here, emotions play a big part in these curves. You evaluate the emotions, the internal part, people, how people react to change. I've introduced you to 5 different change management models today. I suggest you research these models in depth as a group, as a team, in your school, and decide which ones you would like to use, or which one you would like to use to lead your change. Please understand that one is not better than the other. You don't have to use them as a standalone concept. You can use them together. You can use parts of one and put them together. But I would like for you to take the information that you have been given today, and let's get together again and decide which ones you want to use for your school. I'm looking forward to talking with you more about this in the future. The last thing that I would like to leave with you is some recommendations for leading change in your school. First of all, research each model in depth. Determine which will be best for your change. But what are the strong points? What are the weak points of each one of them? Identify what overlapping features exist among the models. Remember to lead the change by keeping the lines of communications open with those the change will affect, and reward victories during the implementation of your change. Thank you. You've been a great audience.